I know we're living in a time of fear and uncertainty. I know many of us are worried about a lot of different things, but at least we can all take solace in the fact that Bill Maher had dinner with Donald Trump recently, and Donald Trump was nice to him.
As you know, 12 days ago, I had dinner with President Trump, a dinner that was set up by my friend Kid Rock, because we share a belief that there's got to be something better than hurling insults from 3,000 miles away.
I'm not going to play you Bill Maher's entire My Dinner with Trump monologue from Real Time the other night, nor am I going to be keeping a running list of all the red flags that Bill Maher aggressively waves during that monologue. Although I will say, red flag number one, my friend Kid Rock.
Okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it. Which he did. Which he did with good humor. And I know as I say that, millions of liberal sphincters just tightened. Oh my God, Bill, are you going to say something nice about him? What I'm going to do is report exactly what happened. You decide what you think about it. And if that's not enough pure Trump hate for you, I don't give a fuck.
Oh man, so edgy. This millionaire with his own TV show really doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks of him.
So no, I didn't go MAGA. And to the president's credit, there was no pressure to. The guy I met is not the person who the night before the dinner shit-tweeted a bunch of nasty crap about how he thought this dinner was a bad idea and what a deranged asshole I was. I read it and thought, oh, what a lovely way to welcome someone to your house. But when I got there, that guy wasn't living there.
So when he says, but that guy wasn't living there, I know he's being rhetorical. He's drawing a contrast between the private Trump that he interacted with and the public Trump. But I really feel like this point needs to be made. They're the same person. When Bill Maher says, oh, the guy who says all those wacky things in public, he wasn't living there. He wasn't the man I had dinner with. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And I know that maybe Bill Maher thinks that he's making some kind of meaningful statement or trying to offer some reassurance to people by saying, oh, don't worry. He at one point in the monologue, he even says, oh, don't worry, everybody. A crazy person doesn't live in the White House, just a man who plays a crazy person on TV. So it's not as bad as we thought. Really? It's not as bad as we thought. A guy who chooses to behave in public the way Donald Trump chooses to behave. It's not as bad as we thought because don't worry, it's all an act. He has self-control. He just is choosing not to exercise it. It's not as bad as we thought, everybody. Do you hear yourself? I know that Bill Maher loves the sound of his own voice, but does he ever actually hear himself?
I've had so many conversations with prominent people who are much less connected, people who don't look you in the eye, people who don't really listen because they just want to get to their next thing, people whose response to things you say just doesn't track like, what? None of that with him. And he mostly steered the conversation to, what do you think about this? I know. Your mind is blown. So's mine.
Oh, Bill, I assure you, my mind is not blown. I am maybe a little surprised at how easy you made this for Trump. Trump is probably a little surprised at that himself. But no, my mind is not blown. If anything, the clip that I just played is the crux of why I think Bill Maher thinks his dinner with Trump went so well and why he's sharing it with his television audience in the awed, appreciative tone that he is using to tell the story. Donald Trump was nice to me. Donald Trump listened to what I had to say. He asked me questions. He seemed interested in my opinions. He laughed at my jokes, even when I was joking about him. Isn't that amazing? Bill Maher thinks that we should all take a little bit of comfort in the fact that Donald Trump is capable of being nice to him. Oh, don't worry, everybody. It's not as bad as we thought. Donald Trump is capable of being nice to people that he invites to his house for dinner. I feel like we can get through this together if we just remember that.
I told him he was wrong when he tweeted the night before that I was critical of all things Trump. Not true. Check the tapes. Moving Israel's embassy to Jerusalem, loved it. The border did need to be controlled. I'm glad the cops are getting their morale back. DEI had gone too far. Biological men shouldn't be playing women's sports. Europe should pay for their defense. And of course, it makes sense that Arab countries should take in Arab refugees.
Good thing he hasn't gone MAGA, huh?
The most surreal part of the whole night was when I got home. I flew back right after the dinner, and I'm in bed watching 60 Minutes from the night before. And there's Trump in one of their stories, standing at a podium in a room that looked to me like one of the rooms and places we'd just been in. And he's ranting, disgusting, you're a terrible person. And I'm like, who's that guy?
Who's that guy? That is the guy you had dinner with, Bill. That is the guy. That's who he is. The guy that you had dinner with is not the real Trump, and then the guy he is on TV is a persona that he adopts for some reason. They're both the real guy. It's all him. He's the same guy, Bill. But listen, those of you who are worried now that maybe Bill Maher has been turned so profoundly that he's not going to be critical of Donald Trump anymore after this dinner, oh no. He reassures us. Bill Maher is still going to be just as critical of Donald Trump as he ever has been.
Because I don't have a good feeling and will be critical about a lot of what he's doing. The trade war and disappearing people, ruling by decree, threatening judges, gutting the government with glee. But I also think he now understands I have a job to do.
I mean, does he really think, with everything else going on, that the rest of us are this invested in the fact that Donald Trump and Bill Maher apparently reached some kind of private understanding? Like, what is the fucking point of even telling us about this?
So MAGA fans, don't worry. Your boy gave me nothing. Just hats. Hats and a very generous amount of time and a willingness to listen and accept me as a possible friend, even though I'm not MAGA, which was the point of the dinner. And we agreed. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you. Don't talk, as opposed to what? Writing the same editorial for the millionth time and making 25-hour speeches into the wind? Really, that's what liberals have? He takes the piss out of everybody else and we can hold ours? Okay, that's my report. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high.
And I wasn't high. He throws that in there at the end as a little self-deprecating button to finish the monologue, because, of course, by his own description, over many, many years, pothead is a term that could accurately be used to describe Bill Maher. And there are other terms that could be accurately used to describe Bill Maher as well. Comedian, well, technically. Talk show host. Actor, a time or two, although I believe those are times that even Bill Maher would prefer that we all forget. But there's another term that describes Bill Maher that has been ringing in my head ever since I heard about this, and then especially ever since I actually sat down and watched the full monologue, the full 13-minute monologue that I've been playing clips of for you here, and that term is mark. That's what you sound like, Bill, when you talk about your dinner with Trump, when you tell the rest of us how nice he was, how gracious he was to you. That's what you sound like. You sound like a mark. You sound like a sucker. You sound like someone who's being worked by a con man. And the worst part is, you know he's a con man. You've talked about it on your show. You know who he is. You know what he does. And Not only did you let him do it to you, successfully, apparently, but then you went on your TV show and you described to the rest of us how he did it successfully to you without apparently even realizing that that's what happened. You got played, you got taken, you got conned, you got worked because you're a mark. At the end there, Bill Maher says, "You can hate me for this, but I'm not a liar." I don't hate Bill Maher for this or for any other reason. I don't think Bill Maher is worth the energy it would take to hate him. And I don't think he's a liar either. I think he's gullible. I think he's easily flattered. I think he's pathetic. But I don't think he's a liar. I believe him when he says that Trump treated him well, that Trump was a good dinner host, that he asked him questions, that he was interested in what he had to say, that he laughed at his jokes, which for Bill Maher was probably the most important part of making the evening flow more smoothly. I believe all of that. I don't doubt Bill Maher's word on that for a second. I also think that it doesn't make any fucking difference. It doesn't matter whether Donald Trump is a nicer guy, a more stable guy behind closed doors than he is in public. It doesn't matter. What matters is what he does. Does the fact that Donald Trump was nice to Bill Maher at dinner change anything that he has done as president? Nope. Whether or not he's a nice guy in private or a nicer guy in private doesn't matter. What matters is what he does. And the same is true for Bill Maher. What really matters is what he does. And what did he do here? He got invited to have dinner with Donald Trump, and he said yes. Why did he do that? Because, as Maher himself says in the monologue I was just playing you clips from, at the very beginning, he says, "This wasn't a summit meeting. I'm not a world leader. I'm not a head of state. I'm just a talk show host. I'm just a comedian." Very true. That being the case, why did you have dinner with Donald Trump? Because, yeah, he's the president of the United States, but he's not just any president of the United States, is he? He's a fascist. He's a wannabe dictator. He's a criminal. He's flagrantly corrupt and incompetent. He's causing untold damage to the lives of millions of Americans. You even say, in your monologue, Bill Maher, you say, he's starting trade wars. He's disappearing people. He's ruling by decree. He's threatening judges. He's gutting the government with glee. Your words, your description, accurate of what Donald Trump is doing as president, and yet you, a private citizen, with nothing to gain from this, except, I guess, getting to know the real Donald and taking some reassurance from that, you said yes when you were invited to have dinner with him. Now, if you were a world leader and you had to meet with him to work out some kind of deal, I get that. I don't blame world leaders for meeting with Trump. It's an unfortunate fact of life that Donald Trump is the president of the United States. And if you need something from the president of the United States, you have to talk to Donald Trump. It sucks, but it's just the way it is. But if you don't need something from the president of the United States, what the fuck are you doing talking to Donald Trump? What the fuck are you doing talking to Donald Trump? And say all you want about how what Cory Booker did in the 25-hour Senate speech was just symbolic and didn't really accomplish anything all by itself. That's fine. But I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you who I am less embarrassed of. Not just even as a progressive, because I don't think Bill Maher is a progressive, but just as an American. I'm way less embarrassed about the senator who gave a 25-hour floor speech and was at least trying to do something, was at least trying to inspire people to rally against this. Instead of going to dinner with the guy in charge of it and then coming back and going on TV and telling the rest of us what a great dinner host he is. What the fuck is that supposed to accomplish? Oh, we have to get along. We can't just keep hating each other like this. You even say, Bill Maher, at the end of your speech there, at the end of your monologue, you say, this probably isn't going to change Donald Trump's behavior at all. He's probably not going to be any different as a result of this. He's probably not even going to be any nicer to me, which again is the most important thing on Bill Maher's mind, clearly. So what was the point? What was the point of any of this, other than going to Donald Trump's house, the White House, and kissing the ring, and debasing yourself, and convincing yourself that you weren't debasing yourself because you did throw in some criticisms every now and then, and you did make fun of him here and there, and oh wow, he was cool about it. What was the point, other than normalizing the guy who, again, according to Bill Maher's own words, is starting trade wars and disappearing people and ruling by decree and threatening judges and gutting the government with glee? What is the point of going on TV and normalizing the guy that you correctly said is doing all of those things? Who benefits from that other than Donald Trump and people on his side? And how is that any different from the ineffectual both sidesism that many, including occasionally Bill Maher, have accused the Democrats of trafficking in for years? Now, one of the other things that Bill Maher says in his little speech here, in his little monologue about his dinner with President Trump, is, "Don't worry, I haven't gone MAGA." And I saw some people on social media in the wake of this saying things like, well, it's official, we lost Bill Maher. Bill Maher's one of them now. And again, I'm not really upset about that because I think we lost Bill Maher a long time ago, if we ever had him. I think if we meaning progressives, if we ever had Bill Maher, it was purely by happenstance. Because Bill Maher has never really seemed to care about anyone or anything or anyone's interests other than himself and his own. That's just who Bill Maher has always been. That's the root of all of his political commentary. That's the root of his worldview and his sense of humor. It's all about him and celebrating him and getting other people to acknowledge how funny he is and how smart he is and how knowledgeable he is about whatever the fuck he thinks he's knowledgeable about, because he's got a bit of an ego, if you hadn't noticed. And that goes along with his established stage persona as well. He presents himself as kind of a snarky know-it-all, a guy who thinks that he's smarter than other people. Although with Bill Maher, I do think it goes a little deeper than that. Thinking that he's smarter than other people isn't just his gimmick, it's his fatal flaw. It really seems to mean something to him that Donald Trump was nice to him at a dinner. And if it does, I suppose that's his business. Although he also seems to think that it should mean something to the rest of us too. And that's a little different. If Bill Maher wants to spend the rest of his life walking around with his head up his ass, that's his choice. And it's a choice he made a long time ago, and he seems completely at peace with that choice, and I don't think that he's going to be making a different choice for himself anytime soon. But if he also thinks that the rest of us should have our heads up his ass, that's an invitation that I am going to decline. Even though I'm sure that if I did say yes, there would be plenty of room up there. Because if there's another term that accurately describes Bill Maher, it would definitely be huge asshole.